a person shouldn't sit in a group of scoffers. Now, the definition of leitzanim, by the way, is defined as the Mishnah says, two people sitting together and not learning Torah is a meshiv leitzim. So the Mepharshim explain what is the definition of a group of scoffers, mockers, people that are not talking Torah, they're not talking words of wisdom, they're not talking normal things of business, they're just making jokes and mockery and making fun of people. So the Gemara says one of the groups that doesn't merit to see the Shechina is kat leitzanim, a group of leitzanim. So when a person is making leitzanis, they have to be very, very careful about it. It says in the halacha that terrible things happen to the person. You don't have a proper parnasa, you go to Gehenim. So all these things. So generally speaking, people should be careful. Like again, the opening pasuk of Tillim, that people should be careful to make sure they do things that are proper, constructive, productive, and so on and so forth. The next din is similar to this, but it's called Hanifa. Hanifa is what's called flattery. Now, what's the definition of flattery? Flattery says it's one of the groups that don't merit to see the Shechina. In addition to that, they bring anger of Hashem in the world. They bring anger of Hashem in the world. Now, it says even the fetuses within the mother also curse the people that flatter. Now, what's flattery? What's the simple definition of flattery from a halachic perspective? So it says a person who's evil, a person who's bad, and you start complimenting them for the bad things they do. That is chanifa. That is flattery. If you praise the person for the bad they do, also no good. But what happens, another evil form of flattery is when a person flatters a wicked person to get in close with him, to get a connection with him, and then they join him in their evil ways. So again, that is also called kat chanifa. That is person that doesn't see the Shechina, and all terrible things come. Now, if it's a question of pikuach nefesh, then you're allowed to. If somebody, God forbid, wants to kill you, and you praise them and say how good they are and how kind they are and so on, that they shouldn't kill you, so then obviously that's allowed. Or if a person speaks with somebody to try to get him to get more involved in Torah mitzvahs, and therefore you flatter them. And the reason why you're flattering them is to create a connection between the two, that then he'll be able to listen and you'll be able to convince him to do more Torah mitzvahs, then it's allowed. Hello?
Rabbi?
You can go on now.
Thank you.
Okay, so then if the person does it to get somebody to get more involved in the mitzvahs, they're allowed to. Or if you want to chanfin in somebody, flatter somebody, to get them to do tshuva, then you're allowed to. For shalom bayis, you're allowed to flatter your spouse, even though it might not be true. But you're allowed to flatter them for the sake of shalom bayis, or if you owe somebody a lot of money and to get them off your back for a while, you flatter them a little to get them off your back, then you'd also be allowed to do it. Or if you want to learn Torah from somebody and you flatter him in order that he should want to teach you Torah, or a Rebbe or teacher flatters the students that they should be able to learn better or to listen to your admonishment, then that's allowed.
What's the definition of flattery that we're using?
Flattery means praising somebody with praises that are not necessarily true. Praises that are not necessarily true. Okay. Now, for instance, one of the examples they give, and this is more also about lying also. The Gemara says, "Ketzem meragdim lefnei hakala." How do you dance in front of a kala? So you say, "Kala norva chasuda." She's a beautiful kala. Okay, that's what Beis Hillel holds. Beis Shammai says, "No, you can't do that. You have to do kala kamei shehi. You have to do the kala. If she's beautiful, you say beautiful. If she's ugly, say ugly." So Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, "How can you say kala norva chasuda b'dvar sheket tirchak? You're lying, which is biblically forbidden. So how is it possible to be able to lie about that the kala is beautiful?" So Beis Hillel says, in his eyes, she's beautiful, and therefore the proof of it is he's marrying her. So it doesn't mean physical beauty, it could be a form of general beauty that the woman has, and therefore it's not called lying, and it's not called flattery. But there is an inyan that it says in Sfarim that you have to be extremely, extremely careful about. And that is at a funeral to, God forbid, flatter the dead person, praising them more than they actually are. Many times you go to funerals and they start speaking about the person, how great the person is, and you would think that they're Moshe Rabbeinu or somebody like that. Over there, it says in Sfarim, you have to be extremely careful. Why? Because when you talk about a dead person and you're praising them more than what they actually are, so what happens is in Shemayim, in heaven, the people in the Bezdin Shamayla will say, "Look at this person. Not only was he not a good person, but he did another thing wrong. He faked it to convince people that he's better than he even was." That will be held against that person. That will be held against the nifter. So therefore, it says, especially when it comes to funerals and things like that, you have to be extremely, extremely careful not to praise and flatter the person more than the person really is or deserves. But as far as people in the world, if you're flattering them in order that they should be able to do Torah mitzvahs better, or they should learn better, or do the mitzvahs better, then it says in Sfarim, not only is it proper, it's a mitzvah to do it. And therefore, that's something that should be done and could be done, and it's a very good thing to be done. Okay, next halach. I see people are still coming on. I'm sure there are certain people that can't get on, but whatever. I know it's a whole mix-up tonight. Okay, next din. Very practical din in the laws of ethics and morals. And that is lying. Midvar sheket tirchak, the Torah says it's forbidden to lie, which is another one of the four groups that don't merit to see the Shekhinah after 120 years. They just don't merit because they lie. The Gemara says, whoever lies is like worshiping idols. It's better for a person to deal with dead carcasses of animals, which was a low profession in those days, rather than lie. And you're not allowed to lie. If a person lies, it's bad for people, it's bad for Hashem, it's bad for everybody, and you have no chiluk in olam haba. Okay, now, even halacha says, if by speaking the truth, people will not want to do business with you, you are still not allowed to lie. Especially if a person believes that parnasa comes from Hashem. So all we need to do is to make the keli, the vessel for the parnasa, the proper vessel for the parnasa. So if a person wants to make, and if you believe it comes from Hashem, and you believe that we just have to make a keli for Hashem's bracha to be fulfilled, so then the only way you could do it is not by lying. And it says all bad midas, the source of all bad midas, it says, is lying. Now, you shouldn't, another thing is, it says in halacha, you need to be meida al ha'emes. Admit the truth. What does it mean admitting the truth? That besides the fact, if somebody tells you something that's true, okay, the Torah says, you know what? Accept it. Accept it. Accept the emes the way it is. Another thing Chazal say, it says your yes should be a yes and your no should be a no. You shouldn't say yes and mean no and say no and mean yes. A person has to speak truthful. I mentioned in the past, there was the esteemed chassid, the very revered chassid of Mendel Futterfass. He used to come to LA once a year. So the Mendel Futterfass once came to LA. It's a personal story. The Mendel Futterfass came to LA and he called me up and he said, I want you to do something for me. So I said to the Mendel, I'll try. In Yiddish, but I said to him basically, I'll try. So he says to me, that is the American bluff. That is American lie. You don't mean you're going to try to help me. When a person says, I'm going to try to help you, it means I'm not interested in helping you. I'm not at all interested. I just want to be a nice guy to get you off my back. So you say, I'll try. So he screamed it to me. Why I said to him, I'll try, when he said to me, that is full of bluff. That's full of lies. That's not the way to do it. If you need to help somebody, tell me you're going to help it. And it says that there's another interesting story. The Alter Rebbe had a chassid whose name was, they called him Rabbi Fall the Emeser. They called him Rabbi Fall the true one, the truthful one. He never said a lie. To the extent that if he walked inside into the house and it was stopped pouring outside and somebody would ask him, is it raining? He wouldn't say yes, because maybe it stopped. He would say, when I was in the street, it was raining. That's the way he spoke. He never, ever said anything close to a lie. To the extent, there was once a Jew who was accused by the Russians of committing a crime, and the Jew was really innocent. And the Russian government, the judge said like this, if Rabbi Fall the Emeser and somebody else would testify that the person did not sin, did not commit the crime, they'll let the guy off the hook. So the Hasidim came to Rabbi Fall the Emeser and they said to him, you have to do this. You have to testify. He said, how could I testify? I'm sure he didn't do anything wrong, but I don't know that he didn't do anything wrong. How could I lie? And the Chassidim told him, it's pikuach nefesh, you have to save a life. You have an obligation to speak good about, you have to tell the people that he's innocent, that you know he's innocent. He went crazy. From one side, he didn't want to say a lie. From the opposite side, he had to save a Jew, but he didn't know what to do. He never said a lie in his life. So the story goes that a day before the trial, he died. Rabbi Fall the Emeser died. And the Chassidim basically said, look at this, look how great he is. He was going to have to testify because he had to save a Jew. But he didn't want to say a lie, so say a lie, so the Eibishter took away his life. That's how the truth, how important it is to say the truth. If somebody doesn't mean they're going to do something, and to say, I'm going to do it, halachically is a lie. It's a lie. We said this many times in Chinuch. If the phone rings and the kid says to his father or mother, you have a phone call, and the parent tells the kid, tell him I'm not home, that's a terrible lie. It's a mamish lie. Besides the fact that chinuch-wise, it's a disaster because you're teaching a kid to lie when it's convenient. But the bottom line is you're allowed to lie. Now, I mean, you're teaching the kid that they're lying, and that you're not allowed to do. But there's another interesting thing. We mentioned this also previous times. Somebody once asked the Rebbe, You know, in the media, okay, if there was 500 people at a demonstration, they write there was 10,000. That's the way the media works. So somebody once asked the Rebbe, how is it possible that religious newspapers lie? If there was a function with 200 people, they'll write 500. How can they? They're lying. They're from a people and they're lying. They're writing a fact. There was 500 people there when there was only 200 people. How can they do that? So the Rebbe answered, the Rebbe answered as follows. Everybody knows that when the newspaper says 500, they mean 200. Everybody knows it. That's the fact. If the newspaper would write 200, then everybody would think there's only 50 people there, and that's not true. So in the press, the Rebbe writes, it's not a lie, because 500 in media language is 200 in reality. Another thing which says, by the way, in halacha, and that is exaggerating is not a lie either. If you're exaggerating, it's not a lie. Now, what does that mean? It means like this. We find it in Torah. We find in Torah that people exaggerated. Where do you have that in Torah? When the Meraglim came back from spying out Eretz Yisrael, and they said to Moshe that their autumn gedalis, they were fortified ad Shemayim until the heavens. They told Moshe Rabbeinu that this had, everybody finally got on. What could I do? I'll do tshuva. What can I do? So it says, they said there are cities that had walls ad Shemayim until the heavens. Now that's not true. Nobody has a wall until the sky. So the Gemara says from there, the Gemara in a few places says, from there you see that you're allowed to exaggerate and it's not considered a lie. Because people know it's an exaggeration. It was 100 million people there. Everybody knows it's not a lie. You're just exaggerating. So exaggerating is not a lie, but a lie is a lie. If somebody says, I will go somewhere, or I will go, then you're not allowed to lie. Now, it says, when is a person allowed to lie? Or say it in a better way, stretch the truth. When is a person allowed to stretch the truth? So it says, for shalom bayis, or to bring peace between person and person. And again, where do we learn this out from? We learn this out from Moshe Rabbeinu. Aaron HaKohen. What happened by Aaron HaKohen? Obviously Rav Nosson says that what did Aaron HaKohen do? When two people fought, he went to one of them and he said, that guy really wants to make up with you. He said, yeah, he wants to make up with me. Okay, I'll make up with him. Then he went to the other guy and he said, the guy said he wants to make up with you. So, and through that, he made peace. So the Mefarshim all ask, how was he allowed to lie? The first guy never said he wants to make peace with him. Aaron HaKohen made that up. So how is he allowed to make up a lie that the guy said he wants to make up with you? It's a lie. So the answer is, from there you see, to make peace, you're allowed to lie. Now the Magen Avram brings down, by the way, and the Alter Rebbe brings it down, but asks a question on the Magen Avram, and most poskim don't agree with the Magen Avram. That's only something, the Magen Avram says you're allowed to lie for shalom bayis, only something in the past. About something that happened in the past, you're allowed to lie, but not for the future. But most poskim hold that even for shalom bayis, you're allowed to lie, something that will happen, or as it's called in English, stretching the truth. In fact, the Gemara in Bava Metzia says that a Talmud Chacham, normally if you lose something, okay, and the guy has to return it, right? There has an identification, it has a siman. So normally, a normal person comes and says, "Ah, that's my item that you found." He has to give an identification. He has to give a siman. Okay? It says a Talmud Chacham. You'll soon see what a Talmud Chacham means. If he comes along and says, I recognize it that it's mine, even though he can't identify it with the siman, you give it back to him. You give it back to him. And the Gemara says, what's the definition of a Talmud Chacham? A Talmud Chacham that lies only in three things: Mesechta, Puria, and Ushpiza. And there's different opinions what these things mean. But Mesechta, for instance, somebody asked the guy, do you know this Gemara? And he says no, even though he does. Even though he does, he says no. Why does he say no? Because he doesn't want the guy to bug him. Start asking them questions. Or out of modesty. Out of modesty, he doesn't want to say, yeah, I know the Masech. That's allowed. So if he lies for that, he's not a liar. The next thing is Puria. According to some opinions, if a guy asks you, did you get drunk on Purim? He's allowed to lie if he did or didn't. Or the last thing is Ushpiza. If he stayed in somebody's house. He was a guest in somebody's house. And somebody asks him, how was the host? Were they a good host? He's allowed to say no. Why? If his intention is, why should he say no? Because the person that asked him wants to know if he should also go stay there. If he should also go eat them out, So then these three things that Talmud Chacham is allowed to. Because he knows that the person is asking the question because he wants to know if he should go stay by them. So it says you're allowed to lie. They'd say it wasn't that good. You're not allowed to. Even the lying, by the way, it says in Halacha, you can stretch the truth. You can't say an outright lie. When Aaron HaKohen said, this guy wants to make peace with you, it wasn't an outright lie because the Jew really wants to make peace. He stretched the truth a little bit. He stretched the neshama, that the neshama wants to make peace, not the guf. So therefore, but it says like this, in Halacha it says, when it comes to kids, lying to kids, you have to be super, super careful, never ever to lie to kids. Why? Because it brings down that this is terrible chinuch, he says, or to lie for somebody else, that they should. In other words, like this. I'm going to finish with this din and then we'll go to Tanya. And that is as follows. A lot of times, and this is things, are you allowed to lie about your age to get a better price? Kids under 12 is one price. Kids over 12 is another price. The kids 13, but they look like 11. Are you allowed to say the kid's 11? Halachically, it's forbidden. You might save a few bucks, but it's mamish forbidden because you're lying. They tell a story. A kid, little kids want to be older. So the parents said the kid had to be under 5 for something. And the parent said, no, he's 4 at the amusement park, whatever it was. And the kid started screaming, no, I'm not, I'm 5 already. Because the kid wanted to be older. Besides the Chil Hashem that comes from it, in all these things, it's forbidden to lie. Even if it means saving money or other things, whatever it may be. Okay, let's go to Tanya.
Quick question. My Rav once told me that lying and misleading are not acceptable. Are these specific exceptions to misleading?
Yeah. If it's only for something in Torah mitzvahs and for something positive.
Got it.
Otherwise, just to lie is halachically forbidden.
There goes Hollywood.
There goes the press, there goes the media, there goes most of the world. That's why this world is called Olam HaSheker, because it's full of sheker. Okay,